Hi everyone, it's Steph and welcome to another video. This video was meant to be a one-day project and I wanted to share that with you that you can actually do a little project in one day. However, it didn't really work out to be a one-day project, mainly because I broke my wrist. So that did turn a one-day project into a 10-day project, but we did get there in the end. So it is a little bit longer than normal, but I hope you enjoy the video and let me know if you like this different content. Thanks, and as always, have a wonderful day. The idea for this project came to me on Anzac Day. Anzac Day is a public holiday for Australia and New Zealand, and it's a day that we honour and remember those who have given their lives in defence of our country. I went to the dawn service, which is at 4:28 a.m. Dawn is really early here, and I got home quite early, about 6 a.m. I had a coffee and then I thought I can do this project in one day. I'd actually taken the following day off, the Friday, so I had a 4-day weekend to do all of the things I needed to do, plus this extra project, if I devoted Friday the 26th of April to getting this all done. I just realised I didn't say, but this is a present for my nephew. So I played around with lots of different designs, but came back to the modified log cabin, which looks a little bit like, I think it's called a lover's knot. I love this pattern. It's so pretty when woven up. I did want to make it a little bit different, so I played with it for a little while until I had something that I really liked. I did it in black and white in the program just to see what it would look like, and I ended up using black and white for the colours as well. So it's the following day, Friday the 26th of April, and I knew that I was going to have to work quickly to get everything done today. So I made a coffee and I sat down and worked out exactly how I was going to make this happen. In the top right corner you can see my clasp warp and weft together table runner, which I've only done a couple of inches of warping, but I will finish that over this weekend. So I decided to do 1 towel and 6 face washes, and I would give 1 towel and 2 of the best face washes or washcloths to my nephew and then keep the others in my stash. I worked out that around 35 centimetres width in the reed would be fine, and I worked out the lengths of my warp and the lengths of each individual project. So I rummaged around in my 8/4 cotton drawer for full or almost full cones and chose black and white, and then rummaged around in my 8/2 cotton drawer for the same black and white in 8/2, so I could use 8/2 for the hems, and that makes the hems just a little bit less bulky when you sew them up. Then using some scrap yarn, I measured out a leader of 3.5 meters. This is way more than I actually need. I worked it out to 2.89 meters, but I always like to round up just to make sure that there's sufficient for loom waste and also sufficient for mistakes. I worked out a pattern on my warping board to give me 3.5 meters. Then I sat down to work out how I was going to warp this, because I'm using 8/4 cotton, but I've got slots and holes that are different colours. I have to work out a way to make sure that I'm not crossing over too much when I'm threading. Now I'm just centering for a 35 centimetre weaving width, and then marking the beginning and the end of my warping with some scrap yarn on the heddle. I'm also going to tie up the heddle to the apron rod because I usually find that that helps with making sure you get nice even tension. For me, there is nothing more satisfying than peeling the sticker off a brand new cone of yarn. So awesome. It's now 7:17 and time to start warping. Following the warping pattern that I wrote down, this was actually a really easy and fairly quick warp up. I actually really like black and white together. The contrast is just amazing, and black and white are the perfect colours when you want to do a colour and weave, when you really want to see the difference and the pattern that just the colour can generate in fabric. It's amazing. When warping, you will sometimes come across a knot in the yarn. And sometimes a knot plus yarn barf, which is what this one was. So I just had to cut that one off and then tie off and then tie back on and then start again. Also, I somehow managed to tie it on above the beam, and luckily the actual cone was small enough that I could just quickly drop it through to make sure it was under the beam. I'm now just over halfway through warping up and I'm hungry, so it's almost 8:30, so it's time for me to have some breakfast. Now, you either love it or you hate it, but Vegemite on toast for breakfast is, for me, brilliant. I was using the pointy end of the scissors to show where I was at in the warping sequence, and then I just decided to use these little sticky pointer things that I have for bookmarks, and that worked out brilliantly to finish the warping up. When I got close to finishing, I just realised that it wasn't going to work out perfectly to 35 centimetres. I worked out that once I finished the sequence and then did the border, that I was actually going to run out of room, so I had to finish it a little bit early, and that worked out to be a weaving width of 33.5 centimetres instead of 35 centimetres. I then finished the border, tied it all off, and by the time it was all done, it was 9:10, so pretty good time. Now it was time to remove the warp from the warping board. I usually just crochet chain it up so that it stays nice and neat and in a rough order. which makes winding on a lot easier. Because this is a long warp, I wanted to use my DIY tensioning device. I've never actually used this for my samplet loom, so it's definitely way too large. I had to use a few more rubber bands than normal. If you want to know a little bit more about doing a DIY tensioning device, I will link the video at the very end screen so that you can click on it when you've finished watching this one. I used a roll of thick brown craft paper in between the layers of warp just to keep the tension perfect, and wound on. This is such an easy, quick and effective way of winding on a long warp, and I can't believe that I only started doing this about 8 months ago, and every time I use this method I'm just so grateful that I did make my own DIY tensioning device, and it costs like almost nothing, and I didn't need any skills. It was just popping down the shops and grabbing what I needed. Finally, that is all done, and I'm now ready to tie on, or do the threading and then tie on, and it's 10 in the morning, so I decided just to have a 30-minute break just to do a few domestic things before I sat down to do the threading. I'll be threading left to right, but my program is right to left, so I've just flipped that upside down just to make sure that I'm threading correctly for the colour and weave pattern that I want. And you can see every 1 and every 2, that is either a slot or a hole. In this case, I've put 1s as the holes and 2s as the slots. As I finish threading each small group, I check to make sure it's correct, and then just tie a knot down the very bottom and trying to match up the knots so they're roughly even and in line with the previous knot. Once the threading was complete, I lashed on just using some scrap yarn, and then evened up the tension along the whole row, just to make sure that as I wind on, the tension is going to be even throughout the whole roll of warp. I always prefer to spread the warp using scrap yarn. I put the heddle in the down shed and then put a double row in, and then without beating in the up shed do a double row, in the down shed do a double row, and then I beat. Then I wind on just a little bit to increase the tension, and then I do it again with another 3, and that is always perfect to spread my warp. It's now time to start weaving, and it's just after 12 and I'm so excited. I know now that there is absolutely no way that I won't get this done in one day. A bit of a spoiler alert there, that's where my thinking was. But I wound some 8/2 cotton onto a shuttle and wove 2.5 to 3 centimetres, which is about just over an inch, to make sure that I've got a nice fine hem for the first towel. I then wound on some 8/4 cotton and started weaving. Unfortunately, what I did was followed my warping sequence, not the actual sequence that I used for the threading. And I did it single, and then I unwound it because I knew it was wrong. And I thought, oh no, it needs to be double. And so I doubled it. Yeah, that was also wrong. And that's when I realized, no, I need to follow the threading sequence in my program and not what I wrote down. So then I finally got it all under control. So I'm editing this about a week later, and I am so jealous of that wrist and thumb that is working perfectly that I can see there. Yeah. Anyway, I finished that first towel on one washcloth, and I just popped some scrap yarn just to mark where one item ends and the next one begins. And that's when things kind of went wrong. So I wove a little bit of the next washer and then decided to take a break and play with the dog. She's a greyhound. And she was doing zoomies. She zigged, I zagged, and we collided. I did go to the hospital because I thought I had done something bad. And they put me in a splint and said I had to come back the next day for some more in-depth imaging, and unfortunately that showed that I did have a tiny fracture in my wrist, one of the little bones in my wrist. So now I have this nice big fat cast. It was way too sore for me to even think about weaving for quite a few days, so I just basically looked longingly at my loom until the following Thursday. So it was about a week later where I felt strong enough to just do a little bit of weaving, but only using my fingers and not my thumb. And I, at the time, suspected there was something more happening with my thumb, but I did find that out a bit later. So I just wove a little bit, just 5 minutes at a time, all throughout Thursday, Friday and Saturday. It was such slow going, especially for me, because I'm used to going flat out all the time. However, I did end up getting it done. I did do 2 towels and 5 washes. There probably was enough warp on the end to do another washer, but by this stage I was done, and I did want to make sure that the project was finished and ready to gift to my nephew at his party. . I secured the end of the project with a few picks of scrap yarn before cutting it off the loom, and I'm so pleased with the result. It looks so pretty and I love it. So this is what it looks like straight off the loom and off the tension, and all of that pattern will tighten up with wet finishing. I wet finished in my washing machine on the delicate cycle with high heat, with a little bit of dishwashing liquid to get rid of any machine oils left over from making of the yarn, and then gave it a really good iron, and then very slowly and laboriously cut off all of the ends and all of the tails. I changed my bobbin over to black thread, which was an interesting thing to do with a big cast on and only a few working fingers, but I did get there in the end. And I've zigzagged the beginning and the end of the project, plus either side of the orange separator yarn, so that they can all be cut off safely and then hemmed. I couldn't quite coordinate myself to cut with my left hand, so I've dragooned my older son, who has very generously given his time to cut all of the washes and the towels apart. I hemmed all of the washes and the towels. I did that without pinning because pinning just wouldn't work with my limited movement, but it ended up working out just fine. And here they are. So I've got 5 washes and 2 fingertip towels, and I think they're lovely. Using the 8/4 cotton means that they're thick enough to get a really good lather up, to use them as washcloths or face washers, but not fine enough, but also fine enough that they dry relatively quickly as well. Now it's just a matter of picking the best towel and the 2 best washers and wrapping them up so that I can gift them to my nephew. And by the way, I so would have gotten this done in one day, absolutely, if I hadn't have broken my wrist. What I will do is another project in a day. Hopefully I don't break any bones during that one, but I will do another one of those over the next few months for you. As always, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please click the like button. This really helps my channel, and if you haven't already, please subscribe. This has been a little bit of a different video, certainly a lot longer than my other videos, but please let me know what you thought of the format, and if you felt that it was better or not. I would really appreciate your feedback. As always, please have a wonderful day.